Welcome, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your service and your willingness to continue to serve. You made a point in your opening statement that sort of jumped out at me that I hadn't really thought about explicitly before. Our adversaries don't have allies. We have allies.
That's right.
That's one of our asymmetrical advantages that we should maintain, it seems to me. You concur, I assume.
Absolutely concur. And as I also noted in my remarks, good alliances are made of strong, capable partners. And that's why when I went to NATO to tell them how much I support the alliance, I reminded them, too, that they also have Article 3 commitments to build their own capacity, to build their own capabilities. And that means living up to what I thought the Obama administration did a very good job at. That's advancing the Wells Summit initiative that everybody commit at least 2% of GDP to defense. And we're far away from that right now. But a successful collective security depends on everybody doing their fair share.
Absolutely. But the bottom line is that we have allies, they don't, and that's an advantage that we should maintain.
Not just maintain, we should keep growing it.
Absolutely.
We should expand our networks and alliances.
In his non-introduction, Senator Kaine mentioned Barbara Tuchman's Guns of August. And the strongest message of that book is mistakes and miscalculation leading to war. I saw a map this morning of military assets in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. There are so many opportunities for mistake and miscalculation on both sides. Do you have any specific plans, thoughts, strategies, tactics for deconfliction to avoid a miscalculation that could lead to a military confrontation with Iran?
Yes, Senator. In fact, I had the same thing came to mind when he mentioned Barbara Tuchman's book, is that miscalculation, in Sarajevo led to how many years of war and how many millions of people died on both sides. The one idea we had from a DoD perspective was to develop this Operation Sentinel, if you will, whereby we, working with our allies, mostly our allies and partners in the region, provide monitoring of the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, provide escorts and sentries to put ourselves in a place where we deter a provocation or a miscalculation. No better way was that most demonstrated recently when IRGC watercraft approached a British-owned vessel carrying oil, and it was and they likely would have either assaulted it or brought it into the Iranian shore and created an international incident were it not for a British warship intervening. And just the simple thing of appearing on the scene and putting the warship putting itself in between the IRGC boats and the merchant vessel was enough to deter something that could have escalated out of control. That's the type of concept we're trying to envision in DoD throughout the Strait, so we don't get into a military fight. We push it into the diplomatic realm.
Do we have any mill-to-mill contact with the Iranians? Do we have any opportunities to communicate as to what actually our intention? My concern is that to one side making a defensive, what they perceive to be a defensive move, the other side sees as an offensive move, and that's how we make mistakes and get on the escalation ladder.
In my short 21 days, I was not made aware of any direct contacts we have, but I do know that we do communicate them. I have through allies, where we signal what we're trying to do and why.
I was going to suggest that there may be some communications through allies in the region just to avoid, again, a miscalculation.
I believe transparency in communication is always good in these types of situations so that, again, there is no misunderstanding about one's intentions.
Changing the subject, we've talked a lot about today about China, a lot about Russia. I'm concerned, and I'm seeing signs of connections between China and Russia, cooperation. Is this a concern, and do you see this as a sort of national strategy 2.0, dealing with a combined adversary?
I think you see a number of things happen. In some places, they are coordinating. In some places, they are cooperating. In other places, it's just a consonance of interests. And interestingly, in some places, they are competing. I know Senator Solomon, he and I have talked about the Arctic. That's one area where Russia...
It's a surprise to me that you talked about the Arctic with Senator Solomon, but go ahead.
It's shocking.
It is shocking.
That's one area where Russia...
Did he quote Billy Mitchell in that conversation? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Fehrenbach. So the Arctic is one place where Russia does not want China.
And
nor, by the way, do we want China.
China recently declared itself a near-Arctic nation, which
I guess near 900 miles constitutes near.
Yeah, right. It's on the same planet.
So I think you
But
see.
this is a concern, is it not, of linkages between the two?
Oh, yes, sir. I mean, that's absolutely, absolutely. And that's why we need to work carefully with our allies and partners. In the context of the Arctic, we have great allies and partners who sit on the Arctic Council who can really help us in that regard, ensure there's nothing there. But in other areas as well, we need to work with our partners to keep that out. I mean, another country I'm very concerned about is Egypt. We see Egypt in some ways drifting off into that sphere, and I want to make sure that we get them back. It's the largest land army in the Arab army in the region, and they're an influencer, so we have to be very conscious of those facts.
And my time is up, but I assume you have similar concerns about Turkey and what's going on there.
Even more so, because they are a NATO ally. They've been a long-standing and very capable NATO ally, but their decision on the S-400 is the wrong one, and it's disappointing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.